The Bold and the Beautiful. Thomas Forrester's darkest descent. Yet when Thomas Forrester returned to Los Angeles, no one expected the storm he was about to unleash. In a bombshell interview, actor Matthew Atkinson revealed that Thomas's latest arc would push the character to new, explosive extreme zones that longtime viewers of The Bold and the Beautiful have never seen before. And he wasn't exaggerating. What began as heartbreak and disappointment quickly spiraled into obsession, vengeance, and ultimately irreversible tragedy. Thomas had disappeared from the spotlight for months following his dramatic breakup with Paris Buckingham. Their relationship, once full of promise, ended in betrayal when Thomas discovered that Paris had been cheating on him. The revelation shattered what was left of his trust. Reeling from the humiliation and desperate to escape the whispers and judgment, Thomas fled the city. But time away didn't bring peace. It brought distance just enough for his thoughts to fester, his emotions to darken, and his sense of control to twist into something far more dangerous. He returned to town quietly, hoping to rebuild, to reset. He told himself the past was behind him, that he could start again. But Los Angeles wasn't done with him, and the pain he thought he had buried was only beginning to resurface. At the heart of it all was Ridge and Taylor. Thomas had convinced himself that if his parents could reunite, everything would fall back into place. He saw their potential marriage not just as romantic closure for them, but as validation for everything he'd fought for. If Ridge chose Taylor, it would mean Thomas had succeeded, that he was no longer the broken son, that he had fixed the family legacy. He poured himself into orchestrating their reunion. Every detail of the wedding, every moment leading up to the ceremony, was laced with his obsessive need for resolution. For once, it looked like things were going his way. Ridge had pulled away from Brooke. He had reconnected with Taylor. The wedding day arrived with all the promise of a fresh start. And then Ridge stopped. At the altar, in front of family and friends, Ridge hesitated. Then, as the world watched, he walked away again. Taylor's face said it all. Another woman left standing in the wreckage of Ridge Forrester's indecision. For Thomas, it was a switch, a rupture, a full psychological break. What had begun as heartbreak now boiled over into rage. He couldn't understand how it had all fallen apart again. He blamed Ridge, but more than anything, he blamed Brooke, the woman who had always pulled Ridge back. The one constant in every moment of pain his family had endured. In his eyes, she was the virus that kept reinfecting the Forrester family, and this time, he wasn't going to let it happen again. Thomas withdrew from everyone. He cut ties. He stopped answering calls. Even Steffi couldn't get through to him. He locked himself away, fueling the fire, letting the anger grow, drawing lines between betrayal, manipulation, and blood. And at the center of every one of those lines was Brooke. The transformation was swift. No more therapy. No more apologies. No more redemption arcs. Thomas snapped. He began stalking Brooke. Quietly, at first, following her schedule, tapping into her emails, monitoring her movements. He told himself it was for protection, that if he could understand how she moved, he could prevent her from striking again. But the truth was, he was unraveling. Alone in his thoughts, he became convinced that Brooke needed to be removed, not just from Ridge's life, but from the world entirely. The first attempt came on a rainy night in Beverly Hills. Brooke's car veered off the road just after a brake failure. Police called it mechanical. Ridge thought it was an accident, but Thomas knew otherwise. He had been there, watching, waiting, and hesitating at the last second. The near-death experience rattled Brooke. She moved in with Katie for safety, but Thomas had already crossed a line, and turning back wasn't an option anymore. He started hearing voices. His own inner monologue became warped. He began speaking to a ghost-like image of Taylor, an illusion in his mind urging him to do what must be done. To protect the family, to cut the poison out, to end Brooke Logan once and for all. The kidnapping was brutal in its planning and precise in its execution. Brooke had just returned to her home after a press event. The house was quiet. Security was off for the evening due to a system update. It took less than 3 minutes for Thomas to break in, sedate her, and vanish. Days passed. Ridge was frantic. Katie was panicked. Liam and Hope joined the search. But there were no clues, no ransom, no demands, just silence. Thomas, meanwhile, had taken Brooke to a remote property in the hills outside Los Angeles, a place Eric once used as a creative retreat, long since abandoned. There, Thomas kept her locked away, rambling about destiny, family, and fate. Brooke pleaded with him. She tried reasoning, reminding him of his son, of Douglas, of the life he was throwing away. But Thomas was too far gone. He spoke in riddles, paranoid, delusional. He believed that by eliminating Brooke, he would be cleansing the Forrester name, that Ridge would be freed, that Taylor would come back, that the family would finally be whole. On the 5th night, it happened. The exact details remain murky. But what is known is this: when the police, acting on an anonymous tip, arrived at the cabin, they found Brooke dead. No sign of a struggle. No signs of violence. Just silence. And a single line scrawled on the mirror in red ink: "The family is safe now." Thomas was gone. The city was thrown into chaos. Forrester Creations halted operations. News outlets ran 24-hour coverage. Celebrities, models, and executives weighed in. The Forrester brand teetered on collapse. Ridge was catatonic. Taylor left town. Katie took custody of Will and shut down all press communication. Steffi tried to hold the company together, but the loss was too great. The world knew, and the stain wouldn't wash off. Thomas became the most wanted man in California. But weeks passed, then months. No sightings, no messages. Just a void where once there had been brilliance, charm, and madness. And somewhere in that void, the ghost of Brooke Logan lingers over everything. A fashion empire shattered. A family destroyed. A legacy poisoned. All because one man couldn't let go. In the end, it wasn't about love. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about obsession, identity, and the terrifying lengths a son will go to when the illusion of family becomes more important than life itself. The Bold and the Beautiful has seen many twists, but nothing prepared its audience for this. Thomas Forrester was no longer a flawed man seeking redemption. He was a villain, and this time, the damage couldn't be undone. Will Spencer was never one to stay quiet when he sensed a secret. The son of media titan Bill Spencer and Katie Logan, Will had grown up surrounded by power, wealth, and whispered scandals. But nothing prepared him or the Spencer and Forrester families for what would happen the night he broke into a downtown LA apartment searching for the identity of the elusive masked man. It started with rumors, fleeting whispers on fashion blogs, speculation in late-night gossip threads, and a series of blurry, unsettling paparazzi photos. A masked figure dressed in black had been seen slipping into after-parties, studios, and even the Forrester Creations headquarters. Some said it was a stalker. Others, a disgruntled ex-employee. The mystery only grew when pieces of confidential Forrester intel began leaking online, teasing drafts, brand partnerships, internal memos. The timing wasn't coincidental. Spencer Publications had also been investigating a larger story involving data breaches and high-profile social media manipulation. At the center of it all, unknowingly, was Luna Nozawa. Will, now a young adult and increasingly involved with his father's media empire, became obsessed with finding the masked man. What began as curiosity turned into a personal crusade. He dove into surveillance footage, hacked metadata, cross-referenced schedules, and then he found a Tone apartment address listed under an alias tied to a recently rented studio suite in Koreatown. Will didn't wait. Armed with nothing but his phone and ego, he stormed the apartment building late at night. No warrant, no backup, just the reckless belief that justice was his to serve. He broke in. What he found wasn't what he expected. The apartment was bare bones but high-tech. Laptops, routers, sound masking devices, Forrester-branded flash drives, and on a desk, a mask. The mask, slick, dark, molded like a second face. Will raised his phone to snap a picture, but a shadow moved behind him. A struggle broke out. Will was shoved hard. He fell, hit his shoulder against the metal frame of the door, and scrambled out, barely escaping. He never saw the full face of the person behind the mask, but he knew this wasn't some petty thief. This was someone with access. Someone dangerous. Someone inside the fashion world. By morning, the story had already leaked. Will Spencer attacked in mystery break-in linked to Forrester espionage. Bill was livid. Not just at the leak but at Will. The legal risks were massive. Unlawful entry, data tampering, invasion of privacy. Spencer Publications was now tied to an active criminal investigation. Civil lawsuits loomed. And the Forrester family, furious. Rich demanded answers. Eric called for immediate damage control. Steffi went into PR lockdown mode. But the real shock came when a name started circulating behind the scenes: Luna Nozawa. Someone had traced metadata from the stolen designs back to Luna's Forrester Creations account. The files were sent to a CLAD folder accessed from the Koreatown apartment. No direct evidence linked her to the masked figure, but the dots were beginning to connect. Luna, one of the brightest new faces at Forrester, now faced a PR nightmare. If her name hit the press, the fallout could be massive. Lost campaigns, canceled contracts, and a wave of public backlash branding her as either a traitor or a victim. Electra Domings, Luna's longtime mentor and friend, had suspicions of her own. She'd seen the late-night emails, the nervous energy. She had once walked into Luna's workspace and found the mask covered by sketches. When she confronted her, Luna denied everything. But Electra didn't believe her. Now, as the scandal threatened to ignite into a full-scale media inferno, Electra stood at a crossroads. She could expose Luna, protect herself, and come out clean. Or she could cover for her gamble everything on loyalty, risking her own career in the process. The tension boiled under the surface at Forrester headquarters. Every glance was a question. Every closed-door meeting, a potential betrayal. Even Hope and Zende started asking questions about who really had access to the files. The company's internal systems were audited. IP logs reviewed. Every move Luna made was scrutinized. Meanwhile, the Spencers moved fast. Bill convened emergency meetings with top legal counsel and PR strategists. He couldn't afford for Spencer Publications to look like a rogue operation encouraging vigilante justice. Will was been removed from any investigation, banned from internal briefings, and forced to issue a vague public apology that sidestepped any legal admission of guilt. But the damage was already spreading. Talk shows speculated on who the masked figure was. Online theories exploded. Fans and foes of both families dissected the tension, calling it Logan v. Forrester, the next generation. Hashtags trended. Public pressure mounted. Behind the headlines, deals started to crumble. A major luxury brand postponed a capsule launch with Forrester. Investors grew nervous. Social media influencers backed out of campaigns. If Luna's name was officially tied to the scandal, the backlash would be swift and merciless. Electra knew that. And after one sleepless night, she made her choice. She called a press conference. Standing alone, calm, and dressed in black, Electra told the world that she had discovered the mask weeks before. She admitted to confronting Luna. She didn't name her. But the implication was heavy. Someone I trusted may have made a mistake, she said. But the real crime is the system that pushes young creatives to desperate decisions. Caught between impossible expectations and digital shadows, the media erupted. Half hailed Electra as brave. Half accused her of deflecting blame. Forrester's legal team begged her to stay quiet, but the damage was done. Luna, crushed and cornered, broke her silence the next morning. In a quiet interview with a fashion journalist, she admitted to accessing the apartment. She claimed it was rented by a friend, a digital artist obsessed with viral marketing. She denied ever stealing anything. She said she didn't know how the files were transferred, but her face told a different story: fear, guilt, and exhaustion. By the week's end, both Spencer and Forrester were under investigation. The masked man had vanished. The apartment had been scrubbed clean. But now the story wasn't just about one break-in. It was about rivalry, legacy, betrayal, and two families staring down the barrel of a long, messy war. Bill Spencer was preparing a media campaign to repair Will's image. Katie urged caution. Ridge was furious but worried. Eric quietly warned that this could unravel decades of reputation. Brooke saw an opportunity to turn public sympathy into strength. Steffi, caught between the brand and her people, started asking if they should distance Forrester from the Logans entirely. And Hope. She watched Luna spiral and remembered what it felt like to be blamed for things she didn't do. She wasn't ready to throw her under the bus. Not yet. But the seeds had been planted. Trust had been broken. And the storyline was only beginning. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a spark. What Will Spencer triggered in that apartment was more than a personal obsession. It was the beginning of a new chapter for the bold and the beautiful. A chapter of suspicion, power plays, and buried secrets clawing their way to the surface. The Forrester dynasty, already cracked by past betrayals, now faced a new era of uncertainty. And the Spencer empire, usually the one pulling the strings, had found itself on the wrong end of the headlines. What seemed like a small detonation could become a full-scale war. Families divided, careers destroyed, and somewhere in the shadows, the masked man still watched, waiting for the next move.
Oh.